Pat, you mentioned a figure. It was a big multi-billion-dollar figure. What was the figure?
It depends what we're talking about. 14 billion in tax cuts, 13 billion in the whole, 3 billion in landlords.
Okay, so I did some scratch math while you were talking, and I wasn't paying attention. So they've got all these billions of dollars that they're just gone now. 3 billion for the Otago Hospital, 3 billion for ferries, 3 billion for housing, 3 billion for nurses, 3 billion for teachers, 3 billion on Nelson and East Coast hospitals. That gets us to $18 billion. Isn't that pretty much our wish list?
Well, but they're only taking 17 billion in, Chewie, so it's never going to work. They're out by $1 billion, so they might as well do none of it. I mean, come on, if you can't do it all, you might as well do none of it.
I didn't study English, so I don't know numbers.
Hey, Nicola Willis did. She studied English. That's her qualifications. That's another conversation I've been having on Twitter today that we'll get to later. Sorry.
There has been so much discussion. Like, I know we have talked and others have talked about capital gains tax, and it was always the big boogeyman of the room, and everyone's coming for your investment portfolio, and you'll die cold and alone and destitute with nothing if Labor brings it in, or if anybody touches it. And we must have, if we're even going to consider it, there's got to be all of these caveats and carve-outs, and we've got to have a different name for it and all of this sort of stuff. Do you think all of this discussion and this very focused talk about it now with National at the wheel and just seeing what they're doing, do you think this is going to put people closer to accepting that this is what we need to do? Because we've been bouncing this ball off the wall for a long time.
Yeah, we have been. There's a number of layers to unpack in that. The first thing that I would say is that the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the OECD, two institutions that are not particularly well renowned at all for being progressive, but actually quite orthodox and relatively right-wing in their economic positioning, have recently made statements, including in their missions to Aotearoa, where they have pointed out that as a result of us not having a capital gains tax, stamp duty, inheritance tax, or anything along of that ilk of wealth tax or otherwise, that we are an outlier internationally, and particularly amongst those OECD countries, for not having a form of taxation that is intentionally going about redistributing. And it comes at the expense of productivity. So I think, firstly, we're not having a rational debate or discussion about tax at all in this country. I do think as well, and look, I'll be pretty explicit about it, because obviously, I'm in the Greens for a reason. I've got, some pretty strong views, and I'll happily debate them with absolutely anybody. I've been trying to get Christopher Luxon to do an economics debate with me for a long time now. So if you guys want to host it, if Prime Minister Luxon would be keen to come on PHU.
He doesn't answer our emails, Chloe. I'm sorry to say. He and David Seymour and Nicola Willis, none of them answer our emails. But just so you know.
Yeah. But we have seen that, unfortunately, the last time that we had Labor at the helm, that they refused to implement a capital gains tax as well. And obviously they laid that at the feet of the Right Honourable Winston Peters. But I think the political calculus has unfortunately been such that we haven't forced this issue. So what I am hoping is that in the next 2 years, as we get to election 2026, that election 2026 is going to be the tax election. It has to be the tax election. If we go back to those figures that I was pointing to before from that High Wealth Individuals report from the IRD, the wealthiest people in this country pay an effective tax rate less than half of that of the average person. That means that the multi-millionaires are paying half the effective tax rate of our nurses and our teachers and you and me and the public servants who are on the front line of helping and assisting people, right? That is so deeply and profoundly unfair. But as you guys rightly point out, we have unfortunately been in this situation where tax has been treated as this bogeyman. But what we're in fact seeing is that as a result of the austerity approach that the current government is taking and the layoffs that have been occurring as a result, that the government's tax take that it needed in order to make its books balance are lower than expected, because income tax projections and GST projections weren't met with reality. Reality was lower than what those projections were. So this is the thing about even the right-wing orthodoxy and the way that their kind of economic modelling works, is that they also rely on taxation. Taxation makes this country go around. It builds the public infrastructure. Or we rely on debt, or we rely on public-private partnerships, which increase the cost of that in the long run for all of us anyway. So let's just have a straight up and honest conversation about it.